The year was 1939. Europe teetered on the brink of disaster. Just 2 decades after the war to end all wars, another conflict threatened to engulf the globe. This was World War II, a conflict that would redefine the 20th century. From the beaches of Normandy to the depths of the Pacific Ocean, this war touched every corner of the world. Millions perished, nations were shattered, and the course of history was forever altered. On one side stood the Allied powers, led by Great Britain, the United States and the Soviet Union. On the other side stood the Axis powers, dominated by Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan and Fascist Italy. The stakes could not have been higher. The very survival of freedom and democracy hung in the balance. New technologies of war emerged, from the terrifying power of the atomic bomb to the strategic bombing of civilian populations. The war left an estimated 40 to 85 million people dead, forever scarring the conscience of humanity. Yet from the ashes of this devastating conflict arose a new world order. The roots of World War II can be traced back to the aftermath of World War I. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, officially ended the war but sowed the seeds of future conflict. The treaty imposed harsh penalties on Germany, including crippling reparations payments and territorial losses. This fueled resentment and instability in Germany, creating fertile ground for extremist ideologies to take root. The global economic depression of the 1930s further exacerbated tensions. Widespread unemployment and economic hardship created a sense of despair and disillusionment. In Germany, the Nazi Party, led by Adolf Hitler, exploited this discontent, promising national revival. The rise of fascism in Germany, Italy and Japan was another key factor leading to war. Fascist ideologies promoted extreme nationalism, militarism and authoritarianism. These regimes were expansionist in nature, seeking to expand their power and influence through military conquest. Their aggressive foreign policies and disregard for international law further destabilized the international order. The stage was set for another global conflict, one that would prove even more devastating than the last. The date was September 1st, 1939. The world watched in horror as German forces stormed across the Polish border, marking the beginning of World War II. Poland, caught between Germany and the Soviet Union, was quickly overrun, its fate sealed by a secret pact between Hitler and Stalin to divide Eastern Europe. Britain and France, honoring their treaty obligations to Poland, declared war on Germany 2 days later. The initial phase of the war in Europe was characterized by a series of swift German victories. Utilizing a new military tactic known as blitzkrieg or lightning war, German forces combined tanks, aircraft and infantry to devastating effect. Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium and France all fell to the Nazi war machine in rapid succession. By the summer of 1940, Germany had conquered most of Western Europe. Britain, however, stood defiant. Led by the resolute Winston Churchill, the British people refused to surrender. The Battle of Britain, an epic air campaign fought in the skies over England, became a turning point in the war. The Royal Air Force, though outnumbered, inflicted heavy losses on the German Luftwaffe, ultimately forcing Hitler to abandon his plans to invade Britain. Section 4, a global battlefield, from Russia to the Pacific. While the war raged in Europe, another conflict was brewing in the Pacific. Imperial Japan, driven by its own expansionist ambitions, sought to establish dominance in Asia. In 1937, Japan launched a full-scale invasion of China, marking the beginning of the Second Sino-Japanese War. In 1941, the war in Europe merged with the conflict in Asia, transforming World War II into a truly global conflict. On June 22, 1941, Hitler broke his pact with Stalin and launched a massive invasion of the Soviet Union, codenamed Operation Barbarossa. The German army, initially successful, was ultimately bogged down in a brutal war of attrition on the Eastern Front. On December 7, 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, the main US naval base in the Pacific. The attack, which killed over 2,400 Americans and sank or damaged numerous battleships, shocked the United States into war. The following day, the United States declared war on Japan, officially entering World War II. With the entry of the United States, the tide of the war gradually began to turn. Section 5, Turning the Tide, D-Day and Stalingrad. The year 1942 marked a turning point in World War II. The Allied powers, bolstered by the entry of the United States, began to achieve key victories on multiple fronts. In the Pacific, the US Navy won a decisive victory at the Battle of Midway, crippling the Japanese fleet and turning the tide in the Pacific War. In Europe, the tide began to turn at the Battle of Stalingrad, a brutal 6-month battle fought in the ruins of the Soviet city. The German army, after suffering heavy casualties, surrendered in February 1943, marking a turning point in the war on the Eastern Front. The Soviet victory at Stalingrad inflicted a devastating blow to the German war machine and shattered the myth of German invincibility. On June 6, 1944, the Allied forces launched Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious invasion in history. Over 150,000 Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy, France, opening a second front in Western Europe. Despite heavy casualties, the Allies managed to secure a foothold in France, paving the way for the liberation of Western Europe from Nazi control. The D-Day landings were a pivotal moment in World War II, marking the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany.